Chapter 137 The Second Awakening. According to Ms. Tong Yue, Mo Fan had come to the most renowned magic association in the nation. He could already feel a magnificent aura streaming across his face while he was still standing out in the square. This was at a completely different level than the Magicians Association in Bo City. The passing people on the stairs were dressed no differently than normal citizens, but judging by their auras, all of them were most definitely magicians. Some were weaker, some were about the same level as Mo Fan himself, but there were also quite a few magicians that Mo Fan wasn't able to sense. If he couldn't even feel the magic aura of those magicians, it was without a doubt because they were at a much higher level than he was. This was undoubtedly the most amazing magic association in the nation. Intermediate magicians in Bo City were in existence that could be considered at the peak, while here, they could be seen as, "Oh, those people were just here for sightseeing. They weren't magicians. That's probably why I couldn't feel them." Right, the Oriental Pearl Tower was open to the public. Visitors had paths that were specifically arranged for sightseeing. Thus, it was only natural for magicians like Mo Fan to walk along the magician's path instead. After passing through an exhibition hall filled with magical advances and items of historical significance, Mo Fan took the elevator which skyrocketed him 100 meters upwards. His current floor was called the lower sphere, and was where the majority of the magicians gathered. Although it was a sightseeing floor as well, its main purpose was to service magicians from all corners of the country. After exiting the elevator, the first thing that came into his sight was a majestic hall. The structure itself was a spherical building over 50 meters in diameter. However, after examining the painting on the curved dome that had a Western Renaissance style to it, he could feel a secretive and mysterious magic assailing him. The receptionist, wearing a white kippah with cloud designs, asked him with a polite smile, "Is there anything I can help you with, Mr. Magician?" "I'm here for awakening. Someone already has booked an appointment for me." Mo Fan replied, his eyes unconsciously staring at the receptionist's beautiful long legs. Tisk, just as expected of a grand city, even the receptionists are extremely beautiful. "Let me check it for you. May I please have your name?" Mo Fan. "Okay, Mr. Mo Fan. Do you wish to look around, or do you wish to head to the awakening room straight away?" the receptionist asked with another smile. "Let's go straight to the awakening room." Between sightseeing and awakening, Mo Fan cared more for his awakening. After experiencing so many things, Mo Fan clearly understood the importance of having yet another element. As Mo Fan passed through the main lobby, he noticed a relatively interesting fact. There were many one-to-one counters. Some magicians were able to enjoy loan service by a receptionist, while the majority of the magicians were seated on the comfortable chairs in the hall. They looked like retail investors as they watched the giant screen, searching for the information they wanted. The screen will announce some bounties, as well as weekly resources issued by the Magicians Association. Those who want them can apply for them. The receptionist seemed to know it was Mo Fan's first time here, and explained this in a friendly manner. "What about the one-to-one service?" Mo Fan asked. "They either paid a large sum for this special service, or have reached the level of an intermediate magician. All intermediate magicians automatically will have one-on-one service. The employees will do a price estimation if they are looking to trade items, as well as methods for selling them. Furthermore, they will also properly explain to the magician information regarding any suitable bounties. Any matters which need to be followed closely or applied will be done on your behalf. This saves time and removes many tedious procedures. But of course, there are also employees who are specialized to get information which you normally cannot." The thoughtful receptionist explained concisely. "So that's how it works." Mo Fan nodded. "Everybody thirsts for special privileges, but those who are privileged are in the minority, and I am in the minority." Mo Fan was brought to a beautiful spherical room. The room was filled with countless amounts of awakening balls, causing those who saw them to feel dizzy. "Mr. Guo, the person who is here for awakening has arrived." After the girl dressed in kippah arrived here, she hesitated a moment before she spoke. "Oh, I know, instruct him to sit there." The man called Mr. Guo looked as if he was busy as he replied in a neutral monotone. Then I shall take my leave." The receptionist peeked at Mr. Guo before her face displayed some disappointment. Mo Fan followed Mr. Guo's instruction as he sat down to the side and waited. At this moment, he was a little excited. It was just like his first awakening held at the school's practice grounds. On the other side of the room, the The man named Mr. Guo hadn't even looked at Mo Fan once as he carelessly walked into another room. The room was dim. Mr. Guo looked at the young woman who was his apprentice and asked, "Xiao Mian, is the awakening stone ready?" "Which element's guiding stone should I use?" the apprentice named Xiao Mian inquired. "Let me see." Guo Liu walked up to the door and looked at Mo Fan from a distance. He didn't bother asking Mo Fan as he showed his impatience, lightning element. "You're not going to ask?" Xiao Mian questioned him. "I hate these kind of incompetent second generations." His age should be around 17 or 18, yet he still came here for awakening with the belief he could use money to awaken the lightning element. "If my awakening house wasn't in need of money to bring in new stock, I wouldn't even bother wasting awakening stones on these people," Guo Liu replied. "How much did you charge for the service, master?" Xiao Mian asked weakly. 100,000 yuan. The probability of awakening the lightning element is just slightly higher compared to normal circumstances, Guo Liu replied. Xiao Mian was shocked after hearing his reply. 100,000 for just increasing the probability of awakening a lightning element for a person, master is ruthless. Xiao Mian didn't say much as she obediently put the lightning element guiding stone around the giant awakening stone. This was the Magicians Association's largest awakening house. The awakening stones they used were of the best quality. Normally the fees were relatively high, but it was a free service if it was a special case, such as a recommendation from extraordinary people. "Come here, kid. I must tell you in advance, what you awaken is up to the heavens and your talent. Even using an elemental guiding stone, the success rate is only raised by a little. If you awaken the light element, water element, or whatever element, don't blame me." Guo Liu walked up to Mo Fan with the appearance of having a bad day. "I got it. Can we begin?" Mo Fan asked. "You may go in, we won't disturb you during the process of awakening," the girl named Xiao Mian answered Mo Fan, still not knowing why they were being unfriendly to him. Chapter 138 Awakening the Shadow Element. Mo Fan walked to the awakening room, which was completely lit up by luminous stones. As he walked to the location where the awakening stone was situated, he realized there were many lustrous purple pearls around the giant awakening stone. Mo Fan was confused when the pearls were clearly emitting the aura of the lightning element. "I want to awaken a dark element. How come the lightning guiding stone is placed here?" Mo Fan asked as Guo Liu was about to leave and close the door. Guo Liu was currently pondering over how to remove the impurities from those precious guiding stones. He really did not want to waste another second with this second generation. He didn't even bother to ask as he said to the female apprentice, "He wants the dark element, then just give him the dark element." "Oh." Xiao Mian obediently nodded and changed to the dark guiding stone straightaway. Guo Liu didn't even bother asking as he once more focused on the difficult task of his own research. Before he began, he couldn't help but mutter, "You want to awaken the dark element on your first awakening? You're expecting too much. Whatever. The lightning guiding stone and the dark guiding stone's price tags aren't too far apart." After swapping to the dark guiding stone, Mo Fan was locked inside the awakening room. The awakening stones felt so familiar, but there was a clear difference from the mass-produced, cheap ones used by his school. Awakening stones were restricted items. You had to register yourself every time one was used. The Magic Association was basically in control of the awakening stones, and they dispatched them to the schools, military, hunters' unions, or other appointed organizations. Half of the tuition fees for high school were actually used to purchase the awakening stones. Although the even more expensive guiding stones could be purchased, the high schools as well as universities had no reason to provide something that expensive for their students. Mo Fan wasn't sure if he would succeed, either. Looking at the black elemental pebbles covering the dark guiding stone, his heart couldn't help but beat faster. Mo Fan closed his eyes as he slowly placed his palm on top of the cold awakening stone. He felt uneasy, similar to a virgin boy touching his girlfriend's breasts for the very first time. When the glossy, cold awakening stone sensed the warmth from his palms, it immediately began to react. From the very center of the stone, a light blossomed. It was very similar to his first awakening. With his eyes closed, Mo Fan was able to feel a bizarre energy flowing through the blood vessels within his body, and in a flash, it all poured into his spiritual universe. It was as if a new life was being birthed somewhere in the chaotic field of his spiritual universe. It was changing his spiritual space, slowly forming a territory that belonged to itself. The motes of energy were as tiny as dust as they carefully tiptoed into this territory, while carrying the intentions of invading. They wanted to own a much larger expanse of territory. The energy wasn't as fierce and overbearing as the lightning element, and it wasn't as active and inciting as the fire element, either. The motes displayed a different kind of calm and a coolness that other elements didn't have, like they were peeking around with ideas of their own. What is this? Mo Fan was momentarily unable to determine what it was. From the looks of its color, this element looked as if it was merging with his spiritual universe. Dark color? Yes, this was a dark color. Does dark have a color and its own luster? The truth was Mo Fan's dark stardust had its own characteristics and its own luster. If he hadn't carefully tried to feel it, then it would have been quite easy to completely overlook its existence. However, the motes existed right there as they gave out a dark stardust radiance. The guidance was successful. Ms. Tongyue said this Guo Liyu's awakening stones were renowned across the country, and the success rates of his guided awakenings were far higher than what the schools could offer. Who would have thought that it really would succeed? Shadow element. So this is the shadow element, mysterious, crafty, and dangerous. Good. With the shadow element in my possession, I'll be able to escape through the shadows like Ms. Tongyue. The usage of the spell is one thing, but the things the spell can do are extraordinarily cool. In a university filled with romance, how could I possibly receive the attention of everyone, distinguish myself above the rest, and capture the heart of the girls and teachers without the incredibly cool shadow element? Cough. Ahem. Forget it. Under his circumstances, where he had two violent magical elements, obtaining a spell that was capable of quick relocation was extremely important to him. Perhaps the wind element was a good choice, but from how Mo Fan saw it, he thought wind was missing that mysterious feeling and potential for controlling things. Now, he had finally awakened the shadow element. Give him some time to complete the primary spell, escaping shadows, and he wouldn't ever have to go through the efforts of sneakily peeking at Xinxia. Oh, he meant, he could fight against magical beasts without restraint. Ha ha ha. 3 elements in my hands. Mo Fan was completely excited and about to retract his hands when suddenly a new sensation was transmitted from the awakening stone like lightning, hitting him so fast he didn't have time to react. Mo Fan trembled. Before he was able to regain his senses, a new mysterious power was flowing into Mo Fan's palms. Just like the previous shadow element, it quickly melted into Mo Fan's blood vessels, and furthermore, it opened up yet another whole new world within Mo Fan's spiritual universe. My God! At this time, Mo Fan was unable to talk. He mouthed the words, but no sounds came out. Recalling the first time he awakened, the lightning element came first, and then the fire element immediately and vigorously followed. The fire didn't even give Mo Fan a moment's leeway to wonder about it. Now, the same thing had happened again. After his third element was awakened, there was actually yet one more energy that charged its way into his spiritual universe. It didn't even give Mo Fan the time to rejoice properly over the previous element before sending Mo Fan to an even higher level of excitement. This was just like a father who was about to hug his son who had been missing for many years before discovering that. It was a buy one, get one free, 1 hit, 2 sounds? Shit, there is no way to describe this. In short, he was happy beyond reason. A 4th element. I have 4 elements. Other people at the intermediate level would only possess 2 elements. It seemed like they had to cultivate to a level above the advanced stage before they'd be able to awaken a 4th element. However, Mo Fan had only just stepped into the intermediate level, yet he had directly awakened a 4th element. This was against the rules of heaven. Calm down, calm down. Shit, I can't calm down. Mo Fan was so excited that he felt like he was blowing up. Controlling the emotions billowing up inside him, he finally directed his attention toward the color of the 4th element. What did I awaken this time? At this moment, Mo Fan's mood was like he had won a lottery. As to whether it was a sports lottery or a money lottery, that wasn't the important part. This winning pool's reward was at a different level. What is this? Mo Fan blurted out when he finally found the 4th stardust in his spiritual universe. The color of this stardust. Chapter 139, The 4th Element. It seemed like there was no color to it. After Mo Fan carefully examined it, he realized that this element actually had no color whatsoever. It was transparent. The reason why he could see it was because he was able to sense the outline of its stardust within the chaotic area. However, it was very close to being invisible. If it was to be described with a color, then the radiance it emitted occasionally was the color of the moon. What element was this? Mo Fan was momentarily unable to make a determination. Are you done? The apprentice, Xiao Mian, opened the door without permission. She saw that Mo Fan had finished awakening a long time ago, thus she began to pout. If you're done, come out. There's going to be a magician coming here to awaken at the recommendation of the magic court, please don't. How come the element you awakened is colorless? The young apprentice Xiao Mian was surprised as she looked at the awakening stone. On the other side of the room, Guo Liu immediately stood up as he heard his apprentice's astonishment. He ran over to the awakening room and peeked inside. When he discovered the awakening stone didn't have any color, yet there'd be an occasional flicker of moonlight, his face was filled with shock. What kind of luck does this second generation have? He actually awakened the summoning element. The vast majority of the people would only awaken a classical element as their first element. Those who awakened white magic, black magic, or dimensional magic could be considered as being favored by the heavens. After all, the first awakening's element were the major cultivations. Elements of major cultivations provided magicians an increased amount of time to cultivate and practice. It made them far more proficient compared to those with a secondary or minor cultivation element. Guo Liyun originally thought that if this person awakened a lightning element, he would go back home with honor in his hands. Who would have thought that he would have changed to dark element at the last second, and while that did fail, he got a summoning element out of it. According to the rules, the first awakening being a classical element was the most common one. The following one would be either black magic or white magic, and the one with the least probability would be dimensional magic. Magicians with a summoning ability for their first element would enjoy an unlimited benefit from those major powers as long as they were willing to. Their rarity and price were far too high. This is the summoning element. HMPH, kid, the 100,000 RMB your family spent on you sure was worth it. The corner of Guo Liyu's mouth twitched as he spoke to the dumbstruck Mo Fan. Mo Fan gasped as he looked at Guo Liyun with an unconvinced face. Summoning element, it was actually the summoning element. Even today, Mo Fan has been unable to forget about the amazing scene of Chief Zhongkong's subordinate calling the Skyhawks flying through the sky of Bo City. That seemed to be the summoning element. He always imagined himself one day being able to mount an awesome beast as he landed on the street. Who would have thought that he unexpectedly be closer to that now? This happiness came far too suddenly. If Ms. Tong Yue was here, Mo Fan would endure the danger and hug her before giving her a couple of kisses. Speaking of which, if I was to tell the matter of awakening the shadow and summoning elements to that old scoundrel Mu Zhouyan, would he package his beautiful Mu Ningzhu and present her to me? That seemed to be equally possible. Where else would you be able to find a son-in-law with 4 elements? All right, since you're done awakening, leave. I am busy. At the end of the day, Guo Liyu was a busy person. He began to wave Mo Fan away. Oh, thank you. Currently, Mo Fan only wanted to find a place to calm his state of mind. Even if you awakened a special element, if you don't put effort into your training, it'll still be useless. Furthermore, you're already relatively old. You're much slower than other people. There is nothing to be excited about, Guo Liyu said. As Mo Fan heard this, he felt cold water being poured over him. He didn't understand why Guo Liyu would say he was old. According to Tong Yue, being able to tread into the intermediate level at this age would still be considered as being incredibly impressive even in Shanghai. Could it be that Guo Liyu's scope of people was even higher? Alright, the city of demons was the city of demons, after all. There were many strong people here. Even intermediate magicians couldn't be considered anything special here. Mo Fan didn't say anything else, and immediately left. As he walked out, the receptionist girl in her white kippao guided another fat youth who looked relatively old into the room. Mo Fan didn't care as he left excitedly. As Guo Liyu saw this fatty, his face immediately broke into smiles. He greeted him as he ordered Xiao Miao next to him to make tea. Oh, you must be the intermediate magician that Tong Yue recommended. Your name was Mo Fan, right? The fatty's face was blank. He pointed at his wrinkled nose as he said, My name is Yang Dahai. The youth who just left was Mo Fan, the receptionist quickly explained. The jaws of both Master Guo Liyu and apprentice Xiao Miao both dropped as they glanced at each other. The expressions on their faces couldn't be described with just a couple of words. After a moment had passed, the apprentice finally regained her senses as she weakly said, "Master. Did we make a mistake?" Guo Liyu's face was stiff as he nodded. "It seems like it." Then he was actually awakening his second element. Xiao Miao said, as expected of the ancient magic court, producing such a monster. An intermediate mage that young. Awakening the summoning element on his second awakening. I, Guo Liyu, am thoroughly defeated. Guo Liyun let out a long sigh. The receptionist didn't know what was going on between the master and the apprentice. She just directly went back to the hall. The fatty called Yang Dahai was also sitting there, completely confused about the situation. "Are you the kid from the Yang family that wants to awaken the lightning element?" Guo Liyu asked as he glanced at the fatty. "That would be me," Yang Dahai replied, as he shook the fat around his body. "Xiao Miao, bring him to the awakening room." "Master, didn't you tell me to go make tea?" "Make what? Don't waste my good tea," Guo Liyu replied as he left to do his own work. That fatty Yang Dahai was completely dumbstruck. How come the happy and sincere awakening master suddenly looks as though I owe him 500,000 RMB? Did daddy give him too little money? Chapter 140, Cultivating 4 Elements Together. After returning home, Mo Fan saw Xinxia sitting on the small balcony in peace. Her eyes were closed, so she must have been diligently meditating. She planned on participating in the magic high school exams in the coming year, so she still needed to learn quite a few things. Mo Fan wanted to share with her the happiness in his heart. However, seeing her earnest and dignified appearance, he didn't disturb her at all. Thinking about it carefully, he decided not to tell her yet. When the time came, he'd just give her yet another big surprise. It was currently afternoon. The bright and beautiful sunlight was like a bright-colored muslin as it softly and quietly draped itself over Xinxia's delicate body. She sat there with particular elegance as she slowly opened her tender lips. She looked like a beautiful girl that only appears in dreams. It seemed she had gotten a huge benefit from cultivating. She, who regarded everything lightly, would not usually be in such high spirits. Mo Fan didn't make a sound as he stood to the side, staring at her. Her dark black hair cascaded across her small, flawless features. Xinxia did not just have a perfectly oval-shaped face. Her cheeks filled out and made her look incredibly cute when she lightly bit her lips. When she calmly closed her beguiling eyes, those defined eyebrows of hers made her look all the more enchanting and ravishing. With this kind of girl, there were rarely times where you'd want to disrespect her. Adding the wheelchair to her delicate appearance only increased one's desire to protect her. The night of the destruction of Bo City, Mo Fan had told her that if she couldn't walk, then he would give her a pair of wings. Magical equipment in the form of wings did exist. However, their price was something a commoner couldn't afford even in several lifetimes. In the past, it would be near impossible for Mo Fan to fulfill this wish. However, right now, he held unlimited potential and would only grow stronger and attain even more riches. There would be a day where he would personally gift her a pair of beautiful wings and allow her to experience incredible freedom. She will be able to enjoy the wind through her hair and the clouds beneath her feet. Mo Fan didn't disturb her. He knew what he ought to do. The joy which the dual element awakening had brought upon him had now cooled down. It had been turned into an unlimited expectation and thirst for the future, a self-confidence that would allow him to control everything around him, and the power that burned fiercely within his heart. After returning to his own room, Mo Fan didn't want to waste a single second more. Awakening 4 elements did not necessarily mean that he had grown stronger. It only signified that if he was to put even more effort in, then he had even more room to improve. He had to invest even more time into cultivation now. He had to practice the control of even more elemental stars, and spend even more resources. Thankfully, the little loach pendant provided Mo Fan with a great amount of assistance. The truth is, the majority of people weren't able to cultivate a single element's magic to a higher level. Thus, how could they possibly have time to meditate on others? Mo Fan, who planned on raising the levels of all 4 of his elements, the time he was going to have to spend on them was not going to be small. With the nourishment of the little loach pendant, Mo Fan would be able to cultivate literally all day and night without getting tired. Mo Fan simply sat in his room with his eyes closed as he spent every day like this. The waters of the underground holy spring had been absorbed by the little loach pendant. Although it couldn't achieve the same effect of the underground holy spring, it was still able to double Mo Fan's meditation speed. A common-grade Stardust magic tool increased cultivation speed by roughly 20%. A spirit-grade Stardust magic tool was able to increase cultivation speed by roughly 40%. The little loach pendant that absorbed the underground holy spring had evolved once more, and Mo Fan was no longer able to determine what grade it was at. However, as long as Mo Fan entered a meditative state, he'd be able to enjoy twice the effect for half the amount of work. It doubled over what it had been previously. This double effect of the nourishment was a solid increase. It wasn't that Mo Fan's comprehension of cultivation was very high, either. The time he could spend meditating was already extremely long, and when he wasn't meditating, the little loach pendant's nourishing would still be active. With this kind of thing influencing him discreetly, he was able to further increase his cultivation. The effects he obtained from meditation would be different every day. Even if Mo Fan was a magician whose innate talent in cultivation was inferior, he would still be able to race ahead of his peers by many levels by relying on the nourishment provided by the little loach pendant. Mo Fan had completely planned his time out efficiently. After 3 months of constantly cultivating, Mo Fan had pleasantly discovered that the stardust of his shadow element's development had achieved the same level it took him a whole year to accomplish with his fire and lightning. The increased speed of the shadow stardust was just like a rocket. Even Mo Fan had some difficulty believing it. It seems like after reaching the intermediate level, the stardusts are simply something familiar for the magicians who possess a nebula. Thus, the speed at which they increase is much faster than it was in the past, Mo Fan mused to himself. The average cultivation time for one element was roughly a day. This was something that everyone did. The little loach pendant's nourishment was able to increase his own cultivation speed by roughly 2.5 times. It would be logical to say that cultivating 3 months with the 2.5x buff was equivalent to cultivating for a little longer than half a year. However, it was actually more like a whole year's worth of cultivation. If this was the annual examination, then it wouldn't even be a problem for him to get an S. Thinking this over, Mo Fan could only think of one reason. His meditation effect had increased by roughly 50% compared to before he was an intermediate mage. Because he had to carefully look after the nebula-level fire and lightning elements, it made it much easier for him to look after the stardust-level shadow and summoning elements. This kind of feeling was just like being a father who had already raised his 2 children to the age of 10 or so years. Dealing with the 3rd and 4th child would be like a casual pinch. His management over them would be neat and tidy, making them docile and obedient. The Shadow Stardust and Summoning Stardust has already reached the level where he could cast their spells. Only then did Mo Fan begin to connect the Shadow Stars. Similarly, the Star Path was something Mo Fan was very proficient in. Even though the Shadow Stardust and Summoning Stardust were something that required him to start from the very beginning again, he used swindling as his method to once more make the arrogant stars obey him. Cultivating the Shadow and Summoning elements was much smoother compared to the lightning and fire elements. He wouldn't make any detours, nor would he lose confidence if he failed. Control was something Mo Fan had practiced first. Normally, those who had connected 7 stars would impatiently attempt to cast spells, and put the majority of their time towards completely utilizing that spell. Considering the limited amount of time, Mo Fan had to suppress his urge to do the same thing. Instead, he put most of his time into consolidating his foundations. When he got to the university, he would have all the time and grounds to practice at. In this desolate place with mountains around, there weren't any pretty ladies with good figures for him to sneakily peek at and distract him.